Hey, everybody. Welcome to, 37, 52, 22. I don't know what number we're on.
35.
35, the 35th edition of Sales Top to Bottom. I'm your host, Keenan. This is the lovely Becc. Becc, have you been paying attention to the Tour de France?
No. I knew it was going to be French related. I have not.
I don't even
I know it's something with biking. I do know this one's biking.
Thank
you. Min, it's all about baby steps. I know it's about biking, but I will say when the Paris Marathon was going on, I was all excited because I saw the front runner and I was like, oh, it's Gammon. Gammon is the name of the runner. So I start looking him up and I ping one of my friends who's French. I was like, did you know Gammon's in the lead? He's like, Gammon is the name of the clock that's sponsoring the Paris Marathon. You did.
Okay, that's funny.
That was an ego hit. That really happened. That really happened.
Well, right. With that, we are on to...
who's winning? Who's winning the tour? Is it, what's his name?
I have no idea.
The famous biker, you know.
Ever since Lance quit, I couldn't tell you.
Lance Armstrong, true story.
100%.
Is from Plano, went to my high school, and had my English teacher.
Well, there's the show, everybody. Thank you very much. That was a great day. That's all you need to learn. That is it. Like, you have learned all that needs to be learned today. That's good. I like that a lot. A real lot.
A real lot. Okay, well, with that, we are on to the first segment of this podcast, which is
Email Teardown.
This is the segment where Keenan and Becc tear down emails and messages that were sent over to them. Now, on to the first email.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. This one, the subject is, Jim, I am a little confused. Hello, Jim. I am reaching out to you to understand why you love Teachable so much and are willing to pay double the price of FreshLearn for fewer features and poor customer support. Last year at FreshLearn, creators made more than $25 million by creating, marketing, and monetizing their knowledge through courses, cohorts, workshops, digital downloads, communities, and more. We have migrated more than 455 plus Teachable creators to FreshLearn in the last 75 days. We do the complete account migration at no extra cost for all your courses. You can look at our creator reviews here on G2 Crowd, Trustpilot, and our video reviews here. The detailed feature and price comparison page, Teachable versus FreshLearn. Schedule a one-to-one personalized demo now. Looking forward to see you save $1,450 by choosing FreshLearn. Keenan, what are your thoughts on this email?
First off, fucking call me Jim. Okay, and you're out. So
let's get the beating.
Favor and tag FreshLearn here. Tag them so they come and watch this. Number two, I'm confused. Now, I don't know if there's no way this clown read gap selling. So it's just a coincidence he tried using the gap selling approach. I'm confused. It's an excellent tool in the right situation. But to lead a cold call email off on that is what is it when you diminish somebody? It's insulting. Condescending. It's condescending and it's insulting. This email basically says, I'm confused why you would pay more for less than dinner. That suggests that I'm an idiot and that I know that I'm paying more and that I know that they're cheaper. You don't start an email off with basically making the person you want to talk to look or feel like they're a fucking idiot, right? Now, if they told you they were doing these things, then you told them it was cheaper, that's a different story because now you're literally confused. You know this and you know that and this, I don't understand. But in a one-sided conversation, to drop that shit is pathetic. Now, here's the interesting part. The rest of the email isn't bad. I don't like how it's structured or anything like that, but he's got my attention. I literally sent this over to Brady and said, hey, you might want to do some work. We will have had to sell ourselves. This person didn't sell it, right? We'll have to sell ourselves. But they've taken the fact that all of that, they truly are more expensive, et cetera, and they simply said, Keenan, we understand you're unteachable, right? Notice I said Keenan. We understand you're unteachable. We have found traditionally that people on Teachable spend anywhere between $1,400 and $1,800 more, and they get less features. I would love to see if you are one of those, would be open to have a conversation to see if you are spending more and are getting less fees and it makes sense to switch. Done. It's an easy conversation. You got to be an idiot not to. Becc, sorry, that took a lot of time.
No, I want you to keep going. I agree with everything you said. I mean, that's basically all I have to say is I think he was really relevant. Like, he hit on all the right points, but the way that you write something can really affect how someone reads it. So careful. And especially to his point, Jim, I don't know how people keep getting that and they got the wrong email address. But the only thing that I would have to add to this is there's a lot of links and there is a link externally, so probably hurt your deliverability. I'm no value today. I'm like what Keenan said. Next.
Well, on to the next email. We'll go super quick on this one. This one, if it'll allow me. This one says, "Hi, Becc. No doubt you are busy, so wanted to reach out quickly once again as you look further down your pipeline to consider your medium to long-term resources needs. Given the rapidly increasing demand for nearshore engineers, many of our clients are establishing non-binding relationships with us early on in anticipation of future demand so that we can be ready to respond immediately when the need arises to provide immediate scale and deliver remote, ready, time zone aligned development teams with zero downtime.
Mm-hmm.
When would be an appropriate time over the next 90 days or so for us to connect over a brief call and assess potential future needs? Best, blank." Becc, what do you think about this email?
I could say a lot of things about this email, but for time's sake, the punchline is never. Never is an appropriate time. From what I know so far.
Okay, let me try this.
Ooh, we have a fucking Buddha version of this thing. We're all
100%.
like namaste and whatnot.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm in Japan. We need to have a good
He's-
Buddhist style bell, you know?
Go to a
Good
Shinto
job.
temple. How do the Shintos do it?
I don't know how the Shintos do. I've never.
I just want to give Min a little bit of a shout out that he's in APAC. He has been for the last couple of weeks, and Min never gives personal details about himself. But here's a fun one. Min kind of got arrested for gambling with some weird dice game in Vietnam.
Hey. Okay, hold up. We need to do a little bit of a
Min got
debriefing
put
on
in a
this.
little cage in the middle of a room, and he called me after the cage. I'm sorry that the email's late. That was his first words.
They let you leave. I'm amazed they let you leave.
Oh no, let me tell you. So one, this was in Vietnam. I'm now in Japan, but that was back in Vietnam, and I was admittedly doing some dice rolling on the streets, and they got me. They picked me up. They don't have real jails there, but they put you in a little cage, like a little metal bar thing. And I was there for
above ground shark cage.
Oh yeah, 100%. But all they want is bribes. That's all they want. So after a call and about maybe $80 worth of Vietnamese dom, we were able to get out of there. So we're good. We are completely in the clear with the Vietnamese.
Do you have any jewelry on or any personal possessions?
Of course not. You're in Vietnam. You have to dress super bummy to make sure no one thinks you have money.
Because they would have taken that shit from you.
The first thing that Min said to me when he got out of the clink was, "I'm sorry that the email's late." I'm like,
that's commitment.
Hey, it's dedication. But either way, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
Sales Mythology.
This is the segment where Becc and Keenan demystify common myths in the sales industry. Now, the first myth of today is that the sales industry is improving. Keenan, what are your thoughts on this one?
Not at all. I'm surprised you went with me first. I would have preferred to hear Beck's opinion on this one.
All right, Becc, what is your opinion?
Yeah, I'd like to hear, because I like to hear your opinion, Becc.
I think the exact same thing. I think not at all. But here's the thing. I would guess from a math view, not at all. From my perspective, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, which I know can't be the truth. I think it's that once I read Gap, listened to Keenan for 2 years, and it finally trickled in a little, I'm like, oh, now I understand what discovery is about. And so now that I see that picture, I see the comparison of how people are doing according with what they're supposed to be doing. So I think that I'm just understanding more and more and more and more and more and more and more how they're not doing what they need to be doing. But the first thing that had to happen to me first was I understood what they needed to be doing. Right? So I look at the industry and I think it's in a very dangerous spot right now. I think people don't know what to do. Like my heart's beating fast. It's so bad. It's really so bad from an ethics view, from a skill view, from a understanding of your buyer view, from a goal view, any way that you want to look at the pie or slice the pie. I think that on a scale of if 100 was, I'm an advocate for my buyer, I know my buyer's world better than they do, and I'm consistently and constantly after helping them, I would give us a 2, is my genuine opinion. But I would have told you probably maybe a 30, a couple of months ago, and maybe a 40, maybe a 50 before I read Gap. And the more I started listening to you.
50 out of 100, I'm assuming?
Yeah, 50 out of 100. I'm like, they're not that bad because they're pretty skilled at manipulating people and deploying techniques. But then I truly didn't, I don't want to go on a Gap tirade, but I truly didn't understand what people, how can you help people and what people really should be after. And what do you mean by a problem? What's the difference there? So once I understood that world, now I look at all of these calls so differently, and I scour through LinkedIn and I see all the influencers post differently. And every single post that I see from an influencer and every single discovery call that I hear, I would say 99.9%, I'm like, you should gut from the beginning. It'd be faster. Is gut it from the beginning, that there's not enough good there that makes the car even salvageable. That doesn't relinquish my responsibility and my desire to run my race to improve it, to do everything that I can to improve it, whether that be I'm not really a micro girl. I'm more of a macro girl, care in the macro by doing content versus coaching, one-on-one is more my desire just from an impact level. But it truly is in the sewer, the sales industry, and the arrogance to think that we're good and that we're improving or that we don't need improvement. I see how AEs walk in a president's club and I'm like, best case scenario, you manipulated your way there. Why don't you go call your buyers and ask them if they think you should be at president's club because of how much you identified and solved their problem? And the answer 9 times out, I'm going to go 10 times out of 10 would be no. So I think that it's truly sales is in a very, very dangerous spot, and it's in it's in the gutter, and it needs a step forward and a path forward, and people to labor on it to get it to move to the next square.
Hi, Keenan. What about you? What do you think about this?
No, I think Becc said a lot of very germane and accurate things. Look, for whatever particular reason, we haven't been able to evolve effectively from the concept of selling products, highlighting products, finding pain to sell our products. It is still exceedingly product and seller centric. And just all you have to do is just stop and look at sales operations and look and ask sales operations what percentage of your or sales enablement, take your pick. I'll go to sales enablement. What percent of your sales enablement playbook, tools, or whatever tech stack is designed and spent on educating the salespeople on the problems, impacts, and root causes that your products and service solve? Then, even in that case, is it done correctly? I have people go and they fill out a pick, which is a gap selling tool, and it says we help companies achieve, we help companies do. They can't even on their own process what it means to identify a problem, right? And then from there, they get so caught up in all the technical problems all day long, where they can't, they can't connect their database to, a NoSQL environment, and if they add too much memory, and they can't do this and they can't do that. And that's all technical stuff. They have no idea about the type of businesses they're selling to. They have no idea what the KPIs are for the people they're selling to. They have no idea how those KPIs are driven. They don't know anything, right? They don't know anything. And then if you take a step back and you take a look at how are they managed, here's a perfect example. Close rates have hovered around 20% for eternity. If we're actually getting better at selling, close rate should have been naturally going up year over year, year over year. Look, they're never going to get to 100. Let's keep it real. But close rate should have gotten to 30, 35, 40 on average, right? They don't. They're still where they always have been. Why? Because, again, hey, sales ops and enablement this time, take a look at your deal management process. Nobody has any idea what a really good opportunity looks like. I can tell you right now, less than 90%, less than 10%, all the way around, 10%, 5%, maybe Beck's even right at 99.9, could actually run a report right now inside their Salesforce or inside their CRM and tell you, based on past sales, these are the most common prevalent problems. These are the size of the problems as defined in dollars, as defined in days, as defined in attrition, as defined in market gains. I don't give a fuck. It depends on what you sell. Okay, so therefore, these are the types of problems we want to sell to. This is what's going on in an organization. This is why we win. They can't do it. They can't do it. So they don't know. So what we do is we dump all this money on top of the funnel, top of the funnel, top of the funnel, top of the funnel. They just keep trying to get the person who can't who can't see a curveball, can't recognize a slider, has slow bat speed, and they keep just saying, put him at bat again. He'll hit something. Put him at bat again. And you're right. You're right. He keeps swinging that fucking bat. Eventually, he's going to hit a ball. Eventually. But they have no clue about why he can't hit it, what he's being pitched, etc. Same concept. And then finally, it's accountability. I've talked to if I hear another manager, senior VP, or even CRO say to me, I can't get the salespeople to put that shit into Salesforce. I can't get management to review all the deals. I can't get management to do this. I can't get management to do that. I'm going to throw up in my mouth.
Yeah.
That's your job. So basically, I can't get them to do their job. And then finally, to end it, because I know this was a long one for both of us, the expectations that the C-level drives and pushes down on sales without any clue what's going on, and the numbers they put in front of them to make without any real understanding of market drivers, without any real understanding of the resources they have, without any real understanding of what's happening. It's just I want fucking this. Go get it.
I'm going to drive you at it.
It's atrocious.
Do you know the game? There's like a mystery murder game where you're supposed to put a card on your head.
Yes.
And you can ask people a certain amount of questions, and your job is to ask other people questions to identify who you are. You know what game I'm talking about? Have you ever played it? I was wondering while I was running today, if you were to take a sales rep and put one of their 6 buyer personas on their head, and they had to do the same thing. They can't ask who they are, but they have to ask questions that will help them get to know who they are. Would they know what questions to ask?
No.
Like, could they identify themselves of like, if I was SDR leader, I'd be like, am I more after booked meetings or more after closed one? And if they're like booked meetings, I'm like SDR leader, right?
But they wouldn't know what question to ask.
Could they do that?
Yep. Great point. I say no.
Here's the thing. I do want to go after the buzzer. I'll take the heat for this. I remember walking into a sales conference 5 years ago and walking through and listening to people who were speaking and on stage and looking around at all the vendors and how they were selling. And I remember thinking,
it's called heads up.
This is heads up. I remember thinking, this is all wrong. And how am I ever going to change it? Because we are so in deep. It's looking at the vendors and the people with the booths and the spin the wheel and the people and, oh, it's all about this acronym and it's all about, ACAT, or it's all about, ANM, or it's all about MedPick, or it's all, and I'm like, and I knew it was all wrong. I couldn't put the details around it before I candidly ran into your work. But I was like, what on earth can I do? Because I know that this is all wrong in the gut of me. I know that this is all wrong. Anywho, it just gives you a picture of like the severity of it. I was like, none of this shit makes sense.
I also think we're dealing with a sales culture that lacks humility, and it always has. Look, I am not going to argue, right? Look, I was an athlete in school, so I'm biased. I'm acknowledging the bias. Ironically enough, in spite of that, I prefer women salespeople over men. And generally speaking, the women I've hired don't always play sports. So I'm not saying women don't play sports. I got 3 daughters that do. But the mentality traditionally in sales is very similar to an athletic type of mentality. That is, you got to perform, do your job, right? Do your job. No excuses, do your job, et cetera, et cetera. But what that also drives is a sense of hubris, where people aren't afraid. We're afraid to say, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Coach, I don't think I understand the playbook. Right? Or I'll get someone who can, right? Or, hey, hey, I think I need to bring in a consultant. Or, hey, I don't think this is working. Or, no, they doubled down. And the longer they've been in it, they doubled down even more. Just watch me go after Medic or something, or Bant, and watch how many people still will just try to defend that till they go all the way to the ground. All the way to the ground.
Or relationship selling. That's another one.
We don't have a black box mentality. There's a great book called, I think it's called The Black Box. And it talks about how in the airline industry, the whole culture is it's okay to make mistakes, because they found out that if someone flies a plane, that they take the black box out and they see the mistakes. And if people start denying it or pushing back or don't want to do it, change doesn't happen.
Yeah.
They have to get people to feel comfortable acknowledging the mistakes, because if they don't, then they don't make the change, and then the pain keeps persisting. So there's this whole culture of accepting the mistakes and being open to the mistakes and not, ripping into people, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the black box comes back and tells you everything that went wrong. You see what I'm saying? And it's all built on correcting and fixing. And it's a culture of mistakes happen. We got to fix them so you can fix them.
So why don't you think that people strive to?
Black box thinking. Thank you, Shane Mead. Black box thinking.
Why? And I want to ask this question, and then we go on. Why don't you think that people have the desire to learn? Like, for instance, I would say half of me desiring to learn is from a healthy place, and the other half not so healthy. I'm panicked that I'm like, what if I don't know something and I need to know it? Yep. And I'm like, and half of that has been public speaking, that I'm like, if someone were to ask me an acronym on stage and I don't know it, I just lost credibility, And so I was on a tear to learn. But I'm like, but the other half was just general, like genuine curiosity of like, wouldn't it be nice to know how I could, when an engineer is talking, what they're talking about, or your buyer is talking, when a CIO is talking, what they're talking about, or what are the statistics behind this? What are the statistics behind email deliverability? Like, part of it was just a curiosity. So where do you think, because I see we are completely void of it.
Let's make it another conversation, but the answer, in my opinion, is simple: insecurity. Learning requires that you accept you don't know. And if you're in an industry or a space where you're perceived as the boss, the expert, the go-to person, right? Then for you to say, I don't know, then...
But wouldn't you learn in secret?
No, because it's a sense of, it attacks your identity. Okay, logically you would learn in person, but there's another book that's great on this, and it's called, I'm staring at Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me. So between mistakes made not by me and the concept of cognitive dissonance, and then you do black box thinking, there are answers in both of those books, Becc. Yeah. It has to do with ego.
I just think you would be Googling your ass off like in the bathroom and not telling anyone about it, is where I would think you would go. But I don't even, anywho, we can keep going. I don't even see that. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. Okay. Well, with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is...
Take it or leave it.
This is the segment where I introduce common sales tactics, and Keenan and Becc let us know whether they will take it or leave it. So on to the first one. Today, the first take it or leave it is network-led growth. Becc, take it or leave it.
I knew he was going to leave with it. Network as in your customers, take it. Network as in the network that the Hummy Chummy Club network that you've built on LinkedIn from personal brands, I'm going to leave it. They never have any money. They're too busy in those comments making it rain. But network from your customers, I'm a take it. And I think it takes a lot of know-how to solve someone's problem enough to where they're comfortable referring you. So one could say I'm a T-bit, but Keenan looks a little ragey right now. He's already been called Jim twice, so I'm like playing it light.
Well, Keenan, what do you think? Take it or leave it?
Leave it. Leave it all day long. All day long. And the key operative word, I'm irritated. I'm really irritated. With the sales industry. If we come up with another stupid acronym for someone to position their product or service, some idea to get themselves credibility or influence, I'm going to puke in my mouth, then I'm going to spoon it out and stick it in their face. Look, you aren't leading. You are not leading the development and growth of any company on the backs of your fucking customers. Mm-hmm. It's not happening. If it said network augmented growth, okay, fine. It's a fancy name for referrals. It's changing the way you engage with people to get them to bring things to you. But that's not scalable. I mean, who's the asshat who fucking came up with this and has convinced people it's a real thing? When you say product-led growth, sales-led growth, marketing-led growth, you had better, those, whether I agree with them or not, those are semi-viable that approach by itself gives you enough control that you can potentially scale at the rate you want to scale. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you're talking network-led growth and this idea that you're going to do this on the back of your existing clients or relationships you have, no, you don't have enough control. And so now you're going to be irritating those customers, the sales team, or whoever you designed to manage these relationships. Then why isn't it a partnership? Who's a dumb fuck that didn't think of the next step on that? So now after they give you 3 or 4 referrals, why isn't that a partnership? And why didn't I get paid for some of this shit? Mm-hmm. Like sit down right now and say, I got to grow a business from 5 million to 100 to 10 million. I got to go a million to 100 million to 150 million. Great. How many of these network relationships do you need? Okay, great. And then from those, how many do you think each person's going to give you? And after 3 or 4, you don't think they're going to start having their hand? Like, no.
Yeah.
The stupidity.
Pyramid scheming.
It's fucking stupid. I'm just tired of it. Stupidity. And these all people have jobs and people pay them money and they sit in these. I don't get it. Fucking think, people. Now,
the next one.
I can get behind augment. I'm not bashing it. It's a part of the process, but not led. Piss off.
Okay, well, we're on to the next one, which is bringing in sales managers and executives to close the deal. Becc, take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave it. It's awful. And everyone's going to look up where I worked. I'm going to leave it. They always screw up deals. And they start talking, they're like, well, I'm the CTO. And in the beginning, I'm like, shut the up, Brendan. They don't care. And what makes it worse is you think they care that you're the CTO. They could give a shit. And now they're just like, you did this to me at the last stage of the game as a salesperson. It never helps. There is one case that I can think of where it went well. I'm going to give him a shout out. It's Olivia Labby. It's an SVP over at G2. And I was like, damn. But he knew some stuff. That was the only time I ever saw it not even help, but not damage the deal. And I tell reps all the time, I'm like, you got to fight them out of there because they think they're being a help by showing up and telling you the origin story. So like, just get them out. I'm going to leave it. Go ahead, Keenan. Sorry.
Leave it. 100%. Particularly sales managers. You can right now. Right. Particularly, 100%, a 1,000% leave it for sales managers, sales directors, sales VPs. Okay, 1,000%. And as a matter of fact, I'm so much of 1,000% that I believe it's back to our original question. It's one of the reasons that sales is in such a shitty position. I would love, I should probably do a poll on LinkedIn. I would love to know what percentage of a sales manager's time is spent on sales calls, because it should be zero. Listen to what I said, everybody. And anybody argue with me, come on, throw it out here right now. Let's go toe to toe, and I'll go on a show with you and have this conversation. It should be zero. There is zero value a sales manager should add on the sales call. Zero. And if they have to add value, they hired the wrong salesperson.
Totally.
Period. End of discussion.
I can think of so many cases where I was just so embarrassed, and I'm just like, oh my God, please shut up.
Yeah, the executive level, to your point, it depends on what. No, it depends on what the issue is. And there
I can go with you there. My experience is the higher up you go, the worse it gets. I've had CEOs, so much so to the point where I stopped putting my stuff in the CRM because my CEO would see it and he'd be like, well, I'm going to bring in the big guns and come to your meetings. And I'm like, and what? Flush it down the toilet? So I stopped putting my stuff in the CRM.
Notice what I did here. The CTO and I don't get to say they come to my meeting. I decide if I want to ask them, because here's a good example. Let's just say that part of this conversation, so we've done the proper discovery, blah, blah, blah. They really like us, blah, blah, blah. And we understand the problem, impact, root cause, the gap. But part of the conversation is they're curious where the roadmap is going.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So then you damn straight I'm going to bring the CTO in, because he's the best person to answer the question of where the roadmap is. Now it's my job to educate him or her and walk her through, this is the problems they're having today. This is the impact it's having on them. This is the desired outcomes. These are the root causes. And oh, by the way, this is why the roadmap is germane to this conversation.
Yeah.
Stay here.
But yeah, their view, I hear you. And I wish it had gone that way for me.
But no one's doing it, Becc, out of fairness.
No, but like I educated them on that stuff, but then their view is like, well, you're just a piddly little sales rep and I don't need to listen to you. And they're so damn proud of the product that they just start talking and they just start talking and talking and talking. And I've just, blown away. Absolutely. I could see that if it was the right C-level. I've never seen it actually flush out. Like it's positive that I'm like, get him like someone throw up or end the call or like something. But yeah, I can see roadmap. Keep going, man.
All right. And with that, we are on to my favorite segment of this podcast, which is
The Inbox.
This is the segment where Becc and Keenan answer questions from our audience. Now, unfortunately, I do not have the trusty mailbox with me, so we will have to go from our notepad. But this one is from Erica S. from Germany. She asks, gap selling requires us to ask a lot of deep discovery questions. But how do you warm up your client, build rapport effectively so that they can trust you? Keep in mind, they've gotten burnt before by shitty salespeople who didn't know how to make good use of all the information and being taken through time-consuming discos. Is it best to meet a prospect in person as opposed to, there's a whole bunch of questions, but the basics of it is, on what level of personal rapport building do you do at the kickstart of the discovery call? Keenan, what are your thoughts on this one?
So I don't subscribe to rapport as part of the selling process at all. I do subscribe to rapport as a natural cultural element that we all go through. So you have to know what your own authentic, personal level of rapport is, and do that, and just do that. I said again, authentic. None of the bullshit. For me personally, it is usually done when we'll wait for other people to get on the call, or right when they get on the call, it's like, hey man, what's going on? You have a good weekend? Or just one question to acknowledge that we're people. And then from there, and that is just mine. I'll do that anywhere, not just selling, anywhere. Okay. So it's my authentic rapport building process. Like when I go out here, I fuck people up with this. I'll call to make an appointment at the doctor. I'll call the bank. I'll call somewhere and to schedule an appointment to get a car stereo fixed. And they answer, go, hey, how you doing? I literally say, hey, how you doing? And you hear the pause because they're so caught off guard, right? They're expecting to be a sales call. And they're like, oh, I'm good. I'm like, great. Hey, the reason I'm calling is, right, I need a stereo system. I need this. So my point in this story is this. You do that. And then this is the key piece for gap selling. You know why you're on the call because it's a discovery call. So I always ask, hey, I know you were interested in our product. I know you said you wanted to learn more. Whatever it is the reason, could you take a second to walk me through what is going on in XYZ? That's how I start every conversation. Could you walk me through? Could you tell me a little about, I understand you wanted to walk me through what was behind your interest in taking this call. Whatever it is, that's where I start. And that in itself is rapport building. Because you're asking to learn more about them.
What about you, Becc? What do you think about this one?
Yeah, so I view questions as they only want to keep going with questions if they're learning things as they answer them. And if they believe that you are going to do something with the information that's valuable to them.
Yes.
So it might not even be malevolent. They're just like, why the hell are they like, why does this matter? So I view questions in two buckets: questions that they don't learn anything that they didn't know before, and questions that while they're answering, they do learn something that they didn't know before, or it piques some type of thought in their brain. So a good example is, if I were to ask someone like, okay, what's your open rate? And they're like 20% or 15%. They didn't learn anything that they didn't know before. But if after that I said, okay, out of the 80% that didn't open your email, how many even were delivered to the inbox? All of a sudden they're like, shit, I don't know. So they just learned that they don't know how many, the root cause was deliverability, and how many, is that what's dampening my open rate? And is that causing? And so they're going to go on an investigative process. So I would view the questions in those two brackets of like, do they learn something that they didn't know before? Or do they not? And you have to kind of play that odds game. The last tip that I'll give is I don't go straight in for the jugular on lagging indicators right away, because it's really, really embarrassing. Like the reason that people say like, tell your doctor the truth is because it's tough to in some situations.
Yeah.
So I try to earn a little bit more favor by asking some root cause questions and some questions that I need to know anyway before I go straight into the jugular of like, how much are you missing quote? And I try to do it in like a multi-tiered approach of like, how is SQL defined? What are they gold on? How is SQL defined? What's the pass-through rate? What's the current KPI? And then historically, how many have they acquired to date? So it kind of warms them up to the idea, but it still gives me the data that I need.
All right, Keenan, have any last thoughts before we end the segment?
No, I think Becc said it well. Questions build rapport when they're good questions.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Especially if you could have known the answer without the person. If you're like, so where are you based? I'm like, you're dead, Brendan. You could have looked that up.
Yeah.
You could have looked that up.
Exactly.
Another one you'll like, by the way, Keenan, is if you ask of like, if you ask a question, you're like, what happens when this happens? You need to give them options to show them that you don't have no clue what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, give them options to show them you know what you're doing. Keep going, man.
All right. Well, with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
The Challenge.
This is the segment where Keenan and Becc break down a challenging subject within the sales industry. And today's challenge is, how to assess your sales team as a whole for effectiveness. Keenan, why don't you start us off on this one?
How do we do what?
How do we assess your sales team as a whole for effectiveness?
Oh, I have a download for this. I'm gonna see if I can find it and share it with everybody. So there's two things you have to do. First, you have to understand, what does success look like from an outcome perspective? In other words, what are you hoping the activities will result in? What do the salespeople have to be good at? Let me phrase it. If the salesperson is good, what are they getting to? What can they deliver? What are the outcomes? Not just quota, but the underlying things as well, right? So it's a dumb metaphor, but in order to be a good receiver, and you have to be able to catch the ball well. If you catch the ball well, then your percentage of your ball drop percentage will be low. Well, below that, then how do you define catching the ball? It's hand placement, it's route running, it's separation. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not just can they catch? Do they have a lot of catches? It's what's behind all that. So you have to lay all of that out. So the first thing you have to do is lay out for your organization the 7, 10, 12. There's not 100. There's not 2 skill sets that are absolutely critical to that role, to your salesperson. Okay. And they can change. There's a lot of commonalities, but you can decide what they are. But to make them up on the fly, the ability to do a good discovery, the ability to critically think, the ability to challenge folks, to the high business acumen, drive. Like, I don't care. But you have to have those, and you have to list those all down on a piece of paper, right? You have to categorize those. Once you categorize those, then you have to ask yourself, what are the outcomes that I want within the organization, right? And again, not just quota, but it could be meeting set. It could be opportunity score for deals. It could be the frequency of deals measured. It could be the I had one in my head. It'll come to me in a second. But it could be the average sales cycle. It could be the how frequently and infrequently they negotiate. Like, I don't give a shit. But you then have to decide what those are, and you have to log those. Then once you log both of those, then what you do is you go in and you start evaluating your sales team based on each individual, based on those skill sets. And I literally have a chart for this. So in a minute, when Becc goes, I'll find and put it in here somewhere. We'll figure out a way to share it with people. So I literally have a chart for this. And so I want you to imagine all the skills at the top. Then I want you to imagine the person, okay, in a row below it. So it'll say Min, Becc, Keenan. And then you rate them across each one of those. And at the end, the person gets a total rating. So let's say Keenan's a 7, Beck's a 9, Min's a 4, right? So now I know where they stand individually. But then for each skill set, I go down. So for, let's say, ability to do discovery, I go down, so I see Beck's score of a 7, a discovery. I see Min's score of an 8 for discovery. I see my score of a 4 for discovery. I add them up, I get an average. I say, okay, so my team on average has a score of a 6. We probably need to improve that, right? And so if you do it this way, and I don't even know the word, I'm not that smart, but if you cross tab or whatever, the skill sets per person horizontally, and you add them up vertically, you now know how each person does across the board. You know how each skill set the person is strong or weak in. You also know how the company does across the board. And the strongest skill set and the weakest skill set across the board. I mean, for each, as a company, that as a company, our 2 weakest at this and our 2 strongest at this, but collectively with this, it's a 4-quadrant view of where you're good. And then from there, you then attach that to those things that you said are important and ask, well, no wonder our conversion rate is this. Look what our team is this week in these things. No wonder. So it's not just about coaching. I'm not going to talk about coaching today. I'm talking about building a fucking framework that highlights and identifies what's important, how they're doing in it, how it connects or correlates to the outcomes, and managing to that on a regular basis.
Becc, what are your thoughts on this one?
So it's how to drive efficacy or how to assess it.
How to assess.
So I think what Keenan said was great. What I'd add to it is, first of all, you have to be very prescriptive of what they're trying to acquire. Like within the cold call, what are the things that they're trying to acquire? What are the goals that they're after? And they have to be extremely defined. I see too many people, the way they coach call to call to call to call to call, and the way and I'm going to pair that along with their assessment. is they're like, well, I think you should have done this in the instance. And I think you should have done this in this instance. And I don't think that you did well there, or the pace is not good. But overall, they're missing an entire framework of like what they should what should the outcome be of the call? The outcome being defined as what should the rep have acquired. So a great example of that is one of the things that I did with my team when I was running a sales dev team is I needed them to have an interest in getting to know their buyer more, like to actually know the company and what's going on internally instead of just selling. So I said, okay, we're going to do a little fun exercise, a competition. I'm going to give each one of you $100 if after your cold call, you can give me a 2-minute description about that person's business in specific, their team in specific, and only 20% of the information can have been information that you researched beforehand. So like 80% of it needs to be what you learned on that call. And I remember them just being like, oh, well, screw back, like and they were starting to gamify it. They were like, okay, well, we're going to be after information. Screw. And I remember them having the attitude of like, screw you, Becc, we're going to win this competition. We're going to get $100 every single cold call. And I'm like, I'm hoping that you are, because when they had that mindset shift of the outcome that they need to know, and that was just step one to being able to diagnose, is getting them in the pool of like going after information at all and having an interest in that. But how I had to do that was be very clear about the outcome and then align it to their interests. I'm like, I will give you $100 if you start to acquire information about your customers. And all of a sudden they started to do it, whereas they didn't do it at all before. So the first piece of advice I would say is you need to be very clear with your reps, not just specific coaching on the spot and not specific assessment on the spot, because your mood is going to change and what you think is going to change. And the subjectivity is going to swing you and them all around. But have a standard for what that actually means before you're going into the call for the assessment. They need to be clear of what they're being assessed on. Either that or you're assessing them on how much they stick to an actual script would be the only way that you could do it. So I would definitely recommend the former. Did you put that in there, Keenan?
The link? Yeah, I just put it on LinkedIn too.
Dope.
Oh,
Dope.
Perfect.
So everybody should see it.
Something else you might try. And people are gonna think I'm nuts. They think I've lost it.
I assume they don't think you're nuts already.
You have got to be savage about the repercussion if they don't acquire that information. The only time I actually listened to my manager, truth, was when I was headed to a call. He was like, so what's their pain? I'm like, oh no. I'm starting to make shit up. We're driving on the highway and he exited and he said, you need to call me, cancel the meeting. We're not going to the meeting. And I was like, oh, that was the only thing that changed me. I was like, I couldn't go to a call. And it was with a potentially $15 million sale. I was like, I want Kyle dead in a ditch. I was so pissed, but I was like, I learned. So a suggestion, and this is where you're going to think I'm awful or insane, is if they don't know the problem beforehand and they can't define it, even if it closes, you don't give them commission. Because they didn't cause the close and they didn't know why, so you can't repeat it. Then they'll start getting to know the problem. If anyone wants to work for me, apply in the comments below.
All right. Now with that, we're on to the last segment of this podcast, which is...
Oh, listen, just one more thing.
This is the segment where Becc and Keenan give us their closing thoughts.
Good God, send it to me first. Oh my God.
Of course. Becc, what is your one last thing? I was not going to get yelled at for calling on Keenan for the fourth time in a row.
I mean, you really pushed the envelope with 2 out of my 3. I'm like, he wants Keenan to kill him. Which, by the way, Keenan, I did not ask him to do that. I know you don't believe that, but I did not ask him to do that.
Oh, the reason why was because I used to have the scenes in a certain order. So it tend to go Keenan and Becc.
Yeah. Anyways, my one last thing. It's probably the well, I had a rough couple of weeks from a lot of different things feeding into it. Like the toughest couple of weeks that I've had in a long time. And the math will tell you that the average human being has 12,000 to 16,000 thoughts per day. 95% of them are verbatim repeats from the day before. Only 5% are new. And 90% of them are negative about yourself, about other people. So I'm just going to encourage everyone to, and encourage myself to guard those percentages, to think of new stuff, to go different angles. And when you're assessing yourself and when you're assessing others, to try to err for that 10% that it's positive. It's harder to. When you're thinking about yourself and others, both. That's my one last thing. Guard those percentages and try to make them increase. That's it.
All right, Keenan, what is your just one last thing? Just one more thing.
You know, I want to encourage people to think for themselves. I really want to encourage, I think it's piggyback to what Becc said. I want to encourage people to think for themselves and take more ownership and accountability for their outcomes. So 2 quick stories. One is I've had a report inside of Salesforce for years now. And it's the simple closing, deals closed per quarter, per month report. And I noticed there wasn't a particular deal on this report for July. And I knew it closed in July. And what had happened is we paid a company, Salesforce expert company, not some guy or some girl, but a company with multiple employees to build all these for us way back in the beginning, several years ago. They built the closing report off the close date the salesperson had in Salesforce, not off the close date timestamp. So in this case, the salesperson had picked the end of the quarter, picked June 30th. The deal didn't close till a couple days into, and they never changed the close date. Mm-hmm. And this thing was calculated off of it. Why do I care? You're supposed to be the fucking experts.
Yeah.
Like, this is your job. This was not some complex, out of the box, right? This is, and yet here you are showing no understanding of sales, and yet you run a Salesforce company. And the other one I'm going to give you is my shoulder. I had, what is it called? Rotator cuff surgery 2 weeks ago. 99% of every person I told was like, oh, you're fucked. Oh, you're fucked. Oh, you're fucked. Yeah, it wasn't pleasant, but I've had multiple surgeries before. This was no worse or no better than any other surgery I had. But I went in like I'm going to die. So just understand that people offer insights, but they're not the Holy Grail. Just be strong enough and independent enough to make your own decisions. Know when to listen to people, when not. Know what information someone gives you to take and what not. And here's the key piece. Learn from when you make a mistake so that you don't have hubris. It's humility required here. I'm not trying to be an asswipe and just ignore everybody, but just stop giving it all away. Stop giving your power away, right? It doesn't behoove you and you get nowhere. Stop giving your power away.
Well, that's our podcast.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Till next time, next Wednesday, I'm Keenan, your host.
And I'm Becc. See you next week.
Peace.